Math 6, Lesson 7.2.4. Essential question. How can I use equal ratios and rates to solve division word problems? Again, how can I use equal ratios and rates to solve division word problems? Today in this lesson, we are going to take what you know about dividing fractions and put that together with what we did in the beginning of this unit with setting up proportions and solving. We are putting two skills that we have already worked on together today. Let's take a look at the first example. 769C. Danica is baking a cake. She only has 3/4 cups of sugar and knows this is only enough for 2/3 of the recipe. How much sugar does the recipe call for? 770. Matt has written the following equivalent ratio for part C. He remembered that he used the supergiant 1 to find missing numbers for equivalent ratios, so he tries to use one here. He adds a supergiant 1 to his ratio as shown below. Matt knows that if you only have 3/4 cup of sugar, and that's enough for 2/3 of the recipe, you need to figure out what 1 would have been. So here are the two ratios. The sugar, notice the units. Sugar was placed on top, so both values with sugar are on top, and the recipe is on the bottom. Here is what she has. She has 3/4 of the 2/3, and we need to figure out what 1/2 would be. In order to do this, you would divide, which means we're going to do that exact same thing. We put our giant 1 in there, and instead of 2/3, we're going to flip it and call it 3/2, just like when you're dividing fractions. Same thing goes on top then. 3 times 3 will give us 9, and 4 times 2 will give us 8. 9/8 is improper. 8 is going to go into 9 one time, with 1 out of 8 left over. Matt knows that if you were to make the whole recipe, you would need 1 1/8 cup of sugar. 1 1/8 is the solution. Let's take a look at our next example, 771. Instead of working with your team, today we are going to work with a video. We are going to set up equivalent ratios and solve the division problems. When we look at this, we're going to do a proportion box. Again, units are the most important thing when you're talking about a proportion box. Let's look at the question. The question is saying 1 serving of rice is 3/4 of a cup. How many servings are there in 12 cups? If we look at where the numbers are placed, 1 serving of rice is 3/4 of a cup. 3/4 is on the bottom, so we are talking about servings. How many servings are there in 12 cups? As we look at this, right here, we simply have a fraction. Whenever you're dealing with a proportion box, you have a fraction. This fraction is 12 over 3/4, or 12 divided by 3/4. Remember, all fraction bars mean to divide. We're going to take this and set it up so that we can solve. 12 needs to be a fraction, which is going to be 12 over 1 divided by 3/4. We want to take this and have it equal to something over 1. In order to do that, in order to make it equivalent to 1, we're dividing, because 4 over 3 would be 12 out of 12, and that was the 1 we were getting in the last few units when we were dividing fractions, which means we also need to put 4/3 on the top. 12 times 4 is going to give us 48. 1 times 3 is going to give us 3. 48 over 3 is an improper fraction, so you need to count groups of 3. If we were to count groups of 3, we would have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, 36, 39, 42, 45, and finally 48. So it's going to be equal groups: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 servings will be our solution. Let's look at another one. Next question. How much will each person get if 6 people divide 0.75 pounds of gold equally between them? The units have already been set up for you. When we look at this, we have 0.75 pounds of gold. 0.75 as a fraction is going to be 3/4. We're going to deal with the fraction version of it. And people is going to be 6. We want to figure out each person. Because we want to figure out each person, that means one person. Again, this is simply a fraction. 3/4 divided by 6. We're going to set that up. 3/4 divided by 6, and 6 has to be 6 over 1 to make it a fraction. We want to find one person, which means we're going to divide, because that allows us to flip this fraction and end up with 6 over 6, or 1 whole on the bottom. 1 over 6 is going to go on the top. 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 6 is 24. 3/24 is a proper fraction. However, we can simplify it. 3 and 24, they're both divisible by 3. So we're going to divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 will give us 1. 24 divided by 3 will give us 8. 1/8 of a pound would be for each person. Question D. Bob, a jeweler, has 7/8 ounces of silver. He needs 2/5 of an ounce for each pendant. A pendant is a necklace. How many pendants can he make? Bob the jeweler. So we're talking about ounces he has over ounces per pendant. He needs 7/8, or he has 7/8, and for each of them he needs 2/5. And we want to figure out how much he needs for each one. Again, we're going to set this up as a fraction. 7/8 divided by 2/5. When you're dividing, you're putting in your giant 1. We need the 1 on the bottom, which division allows us to get 10 over 10, which is our 1, which means we're going to do 5 over 2 on the top. 7 times 5 is going to give us 35. 8 times 2 is going to give us 16. 35/16 is an improper fraction, so we need to count by 16s. Our first group will be 16. And 16 plus 16 more will give us 32. Plus 16 more will give us 48. So we can only have 2 groups. Of 16, we're stuck at 32, 33, 34, 35, so we have 3 left over. 2 and 3/16 is what he's going to need for each pendant. Last one. Emily is working at the deli counter and has 4.368 pounds of potato salad to put into tubs. Each tub holds 0.78 pound. How many tubs can she make? Again, you're always going to start with what they have, and the units are there for us. She has a total of 4.368. Each of them, she's dividing them into groups of 0.78, and we want to know How much is going to go in 1? If we look at this is going to get a little bit messy, which is why we're going to do this one together. 4.368 means you have 4 and 368 over 1,000 as a mixed number instead of a decimal. That is going to transfer to 4 groups of 1,000, which is 4,000, and your 368 over 1,000, divided by 0.78 is in the hundredths place, so 78 over 100. Giant 1, to get the 1, means we're going to do 100 over 78. 100 over 78. We are going to end up with 4,300, 800. So 436,800. And on the bottom, we're going to end up with 7,800 when we multiply. If we were to just divide these numbers, because a fraction bar means to divide, go ahead and plug that into your calculator and see what you get. You should end up with 56. Closure. You try. Circle one expression below. So do the first problem, or the second problem, or the third problem, or you can do all three if you need extra practice. Go ahead and practice dividing decimals. Pause the video, do your work, then hit play and check. Please look at the problem you did and check your work.